the status of the negotiations. They were launched in 2009. Negotiators have been very busy, working round the clock. We're on the eve of a very important stage in those negotiations with exchange of comprehensive new offers in the goods area, including agriculture, and across the board in the other areas of the negotiation. That's going to happen before the next round of those negotiations, which takes place in July. And this will really throw up into sharp relief what the final outcome of those negotiations might look like and where the remaining problems are. The negotiators are all hoping that they will be able to finish those negotiations or come close to finishing them by the end of this year. Now, looking at agriculture, as I mentioned, those comprehensive offers on agriculture will be in this broader package, so you'll see what's being offered there. Unfortunately, there's some sensitivities in the agriculture sector, and on the EU side, two of the biggest ones are beef and pork, of some interest to the people in this area. And on the Canadian side, dairy, poultry, and geographic indications of origin. Now let's take a look at beef. The EU market for beef is very big, about 8 million tons. And a lot of experts are estimating that by 2015, the EU is going to have an import requirement of 1 million tons for beef. That's a lot of beef. And there are good prospects for Canada getting access to that market, probably with quantitative limits. It's worth noting that the EU had put on offer in the WTO negotiations, which clearly aren't going to come to a conclusion this year, and maybe not next year, a 300,000 ton quota in addition to the, 20,000 ton quota they now have. Now that's a very big quota, although it's only a third of their 1 million ton import requirement. And I think it's in that 1 million ton import requirement where Canadians are going to find themselves competing. But no other country has yet, outside of Europe, has yet negotiated, no other major meat supplier has yet negotiated a free trade agreement with the European Union. So we're in a position to get into that market with preferential access ahead of all our major competitors. And building a bridgehead there and developing consumer loyalty, I think it's a very valuable opportunity. Just flagging that rules of origin are one of the things that will be an issue in those negotiations, is an issue already. And basically, the EU does not want to say that slaughter will confer origin. So if you import American cattle into Alberta and you slaughter them here, those won't be eligible for shipment into Europe in the way the Europeans want to see the scheme work. So I just mentioned that as a precautionary note. Pork may be even more sensitive than beef, but the size of the market is enormous, 20 million tons. And you know, again, the access we get is probably going to be limited by quota. Bison, Canada's proposing a separate tariff treatment for beef. At the present time, the EU puts bison under beef in the way they bring it in and charge it duty. Clearly separating it out would be in Canada's advantage, and I think we've got a reasonable prospect of achieving that. The other meat products for which ALMA has an interest, I think they're less sensitive in Europe, and we have a really good shot at getting duty-free, quota-free access for those products, with some of that duty-free treatment probably occurring early on in the phasing in of the agreement. I just note on poultry that any interest we have in selling poultry in that market may be conditioned somewhat by our reluctance to open up our market for dairy and poultry products. There's, of course, one thing is getting rid of the duty and the quota. Another problem is, what about all these other non-tariff barrier restrictions? And there's a lot of work going on in parallel with the main part of the negotiation on sanitary regulations. And of particular interest to the beef industry is the negotiation of an improved protocol to allow for a more rapid certification that Canadian non-hormone treated beef is actually non-hormone treated and can have access to the EU market. I thought it was interesting that the EU has not raised animal welfare issues at the bargaining table. So I mentioned that. We're getting near the end game in these negotiations. We'll have a much better sense after the July meeting where matters stand. I think we'll probably see that we won't really know. The EU's unlikely right now to put an offer on the table on beef and pork. They'll probably say we're prepared to negotiate on these, and that'll be worked out over the course of the autumn, including around the October round, which is seen as critical. It's going to be important for Canada to make sure that we don't get locked into a negotiation with the EU where agriculture is being self-balanced, because that's where we'll start seeing trade-offs between our interest in access for beef and pork and our reluctance to make any concessions on dairy and poultry, and our reluctance not to go too far on geographic indications of origin. So this is what we need to do, and what has happened already is continue to say this is an overall negotiation. For instance, one of the big EU objectives is in the government procurement area. In particular, they want provincial government procurement to be part of this deal, so they want the provinces to sign on. The provinces are actively involved in the negotiations at the table, and I think pretty clearly Alberta and Saskatchewan are making clear that if the EU wants access to their procurement markets and to have that access contractually bound in an agreement, then they're going to need to see something in areas like beef and pork. Now, I end on this note because I think it's really important that people in this industry make clear to their representatives that they want a good agreement, they want a good outcome, and that this access is important to them. And without that, I think the field will be left to the supply management people to talk about agriculture, and clearly they're going to argue and leave no stone unturned in their efforts to protect the market that they already have in Canada. And I don't think that's the way you want to see the world end up. Thank you very much.